anything that allows for quick reward, you should be really suspicious of. Now, admittedly, when I started, I didn't know what the right business was in financial planning and financial services.
If you are listening to this and thinking on the flip side, oh, that is me that wants to go and take that risk, go try it, but be smart about it.
Any company that ended up being one of the biggest companies in the world, I would have bet against them because all of them have one thing in common, which is they changed human behavior.
You're going to struggle as a founder because it's not just all about you that makes the business go around.
The number one thing about being an entrepreneur, or rather being a founder, is...
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Wealth. I'm your host, Andres Sanchez, and today I have David Steele. David Steele is the co-founder of One Wealth Advisors and CEO, and he's also dabbled in growing and being part of multiple other industries. I'm really excited to have David on the show today to talk through his entrepreneurial journey and share with our community what he's done to be successful. David, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start right off the bat with giving you the opportunity to introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers.
Well, from a professional perspective, I started working, I grew up relatively poor, and I started working in restaurants all through high school and college. Loved the restaurant business and wasn't confident I'd have economic security from opening a restaurant. But I guess way back then I would have really loved to have. But I chose to pursue something that was, I guess, more traditionally having a higher probability of financial security, which is going into financial services, becoming a financial advisor. And so I started that in 1991, built that practice sort of one client at a time. I like to say the right way, very slowly. Did not have immediate success out of the gates. But after 15 or 16 years of doing just that, that was, I suppose, my sole entrepreneurial endeavor. I ultimately decided to scratch the itch, open a restaurant, ended up being one of the more successful restaurants in the history of the San Francisco Bay Area, and had since worked with my team there to build it into a very large 7-restaurant consumer packaged goods business that I'm now the executive chairman of. So I am CEO, founder CEO of a financial planning company called One Wealth Advisors that I spend maybe 70% of my time on. I probably spend 20% of my time as executive chairman and co-founder of a restaurant company called Flower and Water Hospitality Group. And I am also founder of and/or boards of a few other companies as well.
Amazing. I'm so excited to, one, selfishly get to learn about what you built and what you're doing and share that with everybody listening and viewing. But I want to start in the early part of your journey there where you had mentioned you built the practice one client at a time the right way. From an entrepreneurial standpoint or just a business owner standpoint, can you elaborate a little more on that and why you didn't try and go for that immediate exponential growth, which I feel like now most people get caught up in?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I'm pretty critical of that. I don't blame individuals necessarily. I think that with the era we are in now, where it seems to be that people are all about social media and influencing and really presenting themselves to the world, and news is completely, it's no longer centralized through just a few news sources. It's pretty much anywhere and everywhere. So the way people digest information is very different today than it was even 10 years ago, certainly more than 20 or 30 years ago. As a result of that, I think, see a lot of success stories, and we're not interested in reading about failures, and so nobody's really reporting on failures. And there is a concept in venture capital called the power law, which is the venture capitalists really push their portfolio companies that they fund to build business models that scale quickly. And there's sense to that for the investor because they want you to fail fast, and they want their fund that usually is 10 years long to have a result. And if it's going to be a unicorn win, they want to know if it has a chance of that as early as they can and accept lots of failure along the way. It doesn't talk about the trauma of the entrepreneur that failed. And so the combination of access to information and really only people sharing success stories creates envy, which motivates people, I think, to pursue business with a more of a hockey stick-like return rather than, as I said, build business the right way, one client at a time, if you will. The venture capital community maybe doesn't help that cause either. And it's hard to argue with the 1 in 100 success stories they have. Those are amazing. And everybody wants to, I suppose, be on the other side of that. But getting there is statistically improbable. For me, when I pursued financial services, it was a really tried and true business that I had lots of examples that I could build my business model on, and really just have a playbook handed to me about what to do. And I saw some get rich quick type areas in the financial services market. Those didn't appeal to me anyhow, because again, the statistical probability of winning and losing, I didn't like that relationship. I wanted a really high probability of success if I was patient. And so I am here when anybody asks me the question about what I prefer, it's looking at tried and true businesses. Maybe you put your own creative spin on the tried and true business to have it feel like it's an expression of your creativity, but you have there's a business to be built there, low and slow, as I like to call it.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a very similar conversation yesterday on an episode. I was talking to a multi-time founder, sold a business to Salesforce, Slack, and has had a lot of success. And we talked a little bit about this. And he mentioned how he just cautions the younger entrepreneur to not look or build a business with an exit in mind. Build a business that solves a problem, and you'll kind of be rewarded along the way if it's really a problem a lot of people have. And it's something that I talk about a lot on this show. Is I think we've almost lost a little bit of touch on like the fact that it is extremely hard to build a successful business. You go on Instagram and you scroll around for a little bit and you see some 20-year-old on a yacht and you think like, oh, that can't be that hard. But that's like what you mentioned, 1 in a million. What in that time, obviously you learned a lot, and you talked about how people don't typically report on the failures or the hardships. What were some of the hardships during that 15, 16-year journey that stick out to you?
Well, I was willing. First of all, I started young. I was 24 when I started the financial planning practice. And so by nature of my age and my coming from a little bit more challenging financial background, my expectations about what winning were probably different than maybe some other people's, which is I wanted to make sure I was going to be able to feed myself for the rest of my life. That was my number one thing I was thinking about. And so once, my hurdle wasn't that high to leap for what represented financial success, frankly. So what I would tell a young entrepreneur is, if you, and I've said this on other podcasts I've been on, and I try to espouse this message as much as I can, if you have chosen to put yourself in a situation where you have requirements of yourself in terms of cash flow, you have a big mortgage, you've got a family that are dependent upon you, and you don't have years of savings in the bank to build a business the right way, it's highly probable you're going to be forced or choose to make decisions that maybe are counter to building what I'll call a legacy or a generational business that maybe is around after you die. You're going to be forced to make get rich quick type of decisions, and it could be bad business. It could be the wrong business. Now, admittedly, when I started, I didn't know what the right business was in financial planning and financial services. So I did take a lot of business to pay the bills that, in retrospect, is counter to what ultimately became consistent with my archetypal client and the service offering we wanted to provide. So I accept the fact that when you're younger, just starting a business, it's really hard to have the refined understanding where that is. But anything that allows for quick reward, you should be really suspicious of. And anything that is a tried and true business that a lot of people have succeeded at with a high probability of success rather than failure, that unfortunately doing business the right way takes a while, that's a clue that it's probably a pretty good business. Don't get yourself in a position where you're dependent on making a certain amount of money for a certain period of time.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I feel like most people fall into that trap of like, hey, I I want to live this really awesome life. I want to have the nice car. I want to have the nice house. When they start making a little bit of money, you mentioned there that you shouldn't do something like that unless you have money in the bank saved and are able to. But I would venture to say, unfortunately, probably a good amount of listeners or viewers now might be teetering with this part in their life because of the demographic and younger audience that we have. So what would you say to them, or how could we maybe elaborate a little more on that?
Well, anytime somebody chooses to take on a dependent, a spouse, have a child, sometimes it's not their choice. I accept that. There's certain, you come from a family where the family needs you to provide. Nonetheless, if you choose or are in a circumstance where you have dependents, the probability of you being a true founder and succeeding and building a business the right way goes way down. So I'm not here to judge. I do think that we celebrate entrepreneurship. And I think that certain personality types are maybe, it's in their nature to be entrepreneurs, to deal with risk and to deal with the trials and tribulations and a lot of challenges that inevitably going to come your way as an entrepreneur. Not everybody has that personality. It could be really backbreaking emotionally to some people when they're faced with their first, what seems to be impossible hurdle. And as an entrepreneur, you will have things that seem to be impossible to overcome. They're not, but they'll feel that way. And, my restaurant company, for instance, has, I don't know, between 250, 300 employees or something. That's 250 to 300 people that aren't actual founders, right? Meaning, every business is full of people that are not founders. And that doesn't make them wrong or bad or less than hierarchically. And it doesn't make me as a founder or anybody listening who chooses to be a founder better than or above hierarchically in a societal or anthropological perspective. It's just, it really is different. I do think there are some people that just simply have to create in their lifetimes a business that is very much theirs, and that should be the motivation, and they should have the foundation to do it, as we talked about earlier, without dependence, or at least if they can handle dependence financially. And they should not do it because they think it's the thing that society says they should do, because most people are not built to be founders. I believe that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And not only because I've just interviewed so many people and gotten the chance to connect with so many founders, but there really are just things that you need to be able to stomach, handle as a founder, and not everybody can do that. And I think you made a really good point of that's not an issue, or that's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, that is normal, and that not everybody starts a company in their life. Now, unfortunately, it's been like hyper glorified because of TikTok and all these different social medias. And I think that eventually will change, because obviously it's just so many people will not be successful. But I think it's just great to highlight, like, if you are that person, if you are listening to this and thinking on the flip side, oh, that is me that wants to go and take that risk. That is me. Go try it, but be smart about it. Don't go all in, or don't blow all your savings.
I'm actually okay with going all in if you're young enough and you don't have dependents. I really actually am okay with that, because you can afford to take the risk. I chose, and I try to deconstruct the idea of binary thinking whenever I can. I'm going to leave my job and start my company. What about I'm going to stay at my job and start my company? I did that. I started one business, grew it to be successful. Then I started another, and I've started others since then, which is to say I wasn't I didn't fall victim to binary thinking. I also live in 3 places. I don't have kids, so it's a little bit easier to do that, but I live in New York, San Francisco, and Lake Tahoe. And I comfortably move between the 3 of them. It was like, where's your primary residence? I'm like, do I have to have one? But everybody is, I think humans just really fall victim to buying. It's either this or that. And if you have a steady income, there's 144 hours in a week. This idea of work-life balance is absurd when you're young. I'm sorry. I'm a humanistic person that cares deeply for people's happiness. But there's a certain phase of your life where if you want to be an entrepreneur, you will not have work-life balance, or you will probably either fail or it's going to take you forever to build the business. So you get to make that choice. But there is a scenario where you have a job and you want to start a business, and there's 144 hours in a week. You subtract the amount you sleep, you subtract the amount you put into your day job that pays you with a certain income. There are enough hours left over to go start something if you want to start something. So again, try to relieve yourself of the binary thinking.
Yeah, and I like that you highlighted like go all in if you're young. And I'm actually somebody who works a 9 to 5 right now and has that fund this project of this big community and channel that I plan on building and that I have been building over time. And I've been a big advocate for, and obviously this is specific to me and what I think where there's a lot of availability in the market. I've always said, if you are competent and think you can build a business and you have people skills, go get a job in big tech right out of college, get paid really well and build on the side. And once you have equaled that income or reached that entry level job income, which is low 6 figures, then you can go and walk away. But you had somebody fund this whole learning period in your life and all of these trials versus doing it on your own and being like, wow, I have no more money in the bank. Like now I got to go get that job, make the money and then start over.
I was walking down the street in San Francisco, and there was a wonderful art gallery that I walked into, and there was amazing art, and talked to the person who created the art gallery and found out she was an attorney and left being an attorney to start the art gallery, and further found out how the art gallery was doing, which is to say it was struggling to get off the ground. And art galleries, as I've learned in my nonprofit board stuff I've done in the arts world, that art galleries are really about your collectors. And so your client is your collector, and the product manufacturer is the artist. It's not, your artist is not your client, it's the collector. So if you don't have collectors to buy the art that's produced by your artist, the product creators, it takes time. Build the business the right way, one collector at a time. She had a salary from her law practice, and I thought to myself, and I don't think I said this to her, but why didn't you stay a lawyer and do this on the side? She might have said, well, it requires somebody to be here. And I would say, then hire a young you and nurture them and manage that person. And that brings me to a really important point. To me, the overwhelming majority of businesses that are ultimately going to be sustainable and maybe even generational are going to be the commonality from one business to the next versus the differences from one business to the next are far greater. That is to say, all business is finance, it's marketing, it's product or service defining, it's understanding your customer. Notice I didn't say what the product or service was just then. In other words, all companies have these problems or these areas of consideration. That is to say, as the business grows, it's going to require people. And so really the number one thing about being an entrepreneur, or rather being a founder, is ultimately understanding it's all people. It's your customer, it's your team members. Are you nurturing and developing and caring for your stakeholders?
Yeah, I think having people skills and being very personable, empathetic, and having that all be genuine are massive reasons why some founders succeed and some don't. At the end of the day, I feel like we're getting close with AI that you'll be able to build these multi-million-dollar businesses solo, but till now you need people under you to foster and create what your idea is or what that business is. It's not going to be just you doing the whole thing. So if you don't have the skills to work with people, build people up, and like you said, nurture them, you're going to struggle as a founder because it's not just all about you that makes the business go round.
I have a prediction about there will not be too many AI businesses that are devoid of people, and maybe there's just a founder in AI. The reason I have that prediction is, number one, that person's going to go crazy. It's just not, I don't think they're going to be happy. It's fun to work with people. I mean, we are social creatures, and really at the end of the day, we want to feel loved and valued, and we want to love and value others. And that's what society is. And I do think that AI is probably going to allow us all to scale ourselves and our businesses maybe more than we could before. But I'm I'm somewhat confident that people are always going to want to do business with and for people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more because of the fact and it's funny, I've talked about this. I've talked about it at the lowest scale where I'm speaking to people who know nothing about AI and I'm trying to tell them that it's not scary and that it won't take their job. Somebody who knows how to use it will take their job, so they should start to just understand it a little bit better. But I've also talked to people on the other side who are like AI this, AI that, like single person $1 million businesses. I actually fall more on your side of the idea here, where people and working with people and interacting with people is so amazing that there's no way that it gets removed from what we do, because from a sanity standpoint, it just doesn't make sense. Like the math doesn't add up.
Psychology doesn't add up.
Yeah. Okay. We've talked a little bit about a few different things here. I want to highlight some of the other stuff. You built the early parts of your wealth through the wealth management and the finance company. You've been able to then parlay that into different passions. Like you mentioned, the restaurant. You always wanted a restaurant. You were able to be successful and you got to open the restaurant. Talk to me a little bit about that journey.
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, I was not confident I could succeed. I mean, let's face it, a good portion of restaurants fail, and a lot of financial services practices, if they're built the right way, succeed. Just the probabilistic outcome is much, much higher. A lot of people I started in the industry with in financial services failed, but that's because they were unwilling to build it, one client at a time, if you will, and they were impatient. And with restaurants, it's just the failure rate is just so very high. I hypothesize that the failure rate is as high as it is because it's a romanticized business that both attracts artisans that are not necessarily trained for pragmatic business principles, and investor capital because it's so romanticized that people sort of take a shot and give somebody who maybe not be qualified as a business person capital. And so many restaurants are started without business plans that the entrepreneur doesn't have a healthy relationship with capital and has built up scar tissue to understand how precious capital is. And so, fortunately, because I built my financial planning practice, I had client after client after client that inevitably I learned about wins and losses through osmosis. I developed some semblance of best practices in business, I suppose. I had a playbook subconsciously in my mind that applied to all business, maybe, and I chose to apply it to restaurants. And I think I got lucky, though, because even with all of that, my first restaurant could have failed, and I probably would have never done another entrepreneurial endeavor, if I'm being honest. So I got really lucky, but I had to scratch that itch. And after 15 years of financial planning, I scratched the itch, put a team together, raised money from investors. It was 2008, so nobody would give me any money, so I had to put up half the capital myself. I sold my apartment in order to do it, and it ended up working. And so we've since then turned it into a company, and now it has much more resiliency, because even if something were to go wrong at one of the restaurants or one of the lines of business, or we have an unforeseen incident, whether it be legal or regulatory, whatever it may be, we're pretty strong now. But it was pretty scary when I did it, and I'm really glad that I had my day job, and I continue to have my day job because it allows me to take risks.
Before we dive into, because I'm curious why you think the restaurant's been so successful and what are some of the levers that you pulled, I want to go into that playbook that you mentioned. How do we extract all of the knowledge that you got over those 15 years of hearing people succeed and fail and condense it down into the playbook that you have in your head for the young and aspiring entrepreneurs listening now?
Well, what I would say is my ideas around creating a business are darn near identical to my ideas around doing financial planning for individuals, which is to say, I believe that goal setting is, I say this a lot, goal setting is human magic. If we actually articulate our goals, write them down, even if we don't develop a plan to achieve those goals, just the act of writing them down does something to our energy and we wake up years later and we look at that piece of paper, maybe we wrote those goals down on, and I would be unsurprised if people achieve most of those goals. And so we do that with financial planning. With financial planning, the number one thing we do is we help people articulate their goals. And usually if there's like 15 goals or even 10 goals or even 8 goals, that's too many. 3, 4 goals feels right. There's the normal ones that one can expect. And then I ask people to really unpack those goals and make sure they're authentically theirs rather than societal influence on what their goals should be. I want to retire when I'm 55. Why? Simply asking the question why. The number of people that have an answer for me, maybe I can count on one finger. Nobody. I mean, everybody says they want to retire young, and nobody can answer nobody can answer the question when I say why with a good answer. I mean, I get nonsense answers, but a convincing answer. Nobody. So,
And why do you think that is?
Oh, I think it's ego and societal influence. I have a saying, which is I wouldn't wish retirement on my worst enemy. That's not to say we haven't had clients that have retired and haven't been really happy. But I will tell you, show me somebody who has retired and is really happy, and I will show you somebody that had a sense of purpose and self-worth and value that was above and beyond their professional accomplishments and endeavors. Many people have so much of their identity wrapped up in retirement, in their careers, that when they retire, they've reached this sort of mountaintop like pinnacle achievement, and they finally have enough wealth to be able to retire, and they do, and they're like, oh wow, I'm actually not only not happy, I'm unhappy. Well, in retrospect, it was because so much of your identity was wrapped up in your professional endeavors. So anyway, you asked the question about entrepreneurship. Is it any different? I mean, if you're going to start a business, write down what your goals are. 2, 3, 4 goals for the business, for you personally as it relates to being the entrepreneur with the business. Have a group of advisors who are hopefully seasoned, that you respect, and show them those goals. Work maybe with those advisors or work on your own. I think you could use ChatGPT on developing a business plan. Have it vetted by your advisors, and then really develop a plan. So the first thing I would say is, what are your goals for your business, and what's your plan to achieve those goals? I will say I would have been the person to bet against Meta, Facebook at the time, Google, any company that ended up being this, one of the biggest companies in the world. I would have bet against them because all of them have one thing in common, which is they changed human behavior. They were involved in changing Amazon. We didn't do at all what Meta now has us do, and what Amazon now has us do, and what Google now has us do, and what, ChatGPT now has us do, and so forth and so on. That is to say 999,000 of them had to fail that were trying to change human behavior for the one that won, which is why I would bet against it, because the odds are just really in my favor to win the bet.
Yep.
So if it's a business that you want to change human behavior, be careful. It's low probability of succeeding, and the world will not write about your failure. And you will not have any money in the bank from that failure. And you will have a lot of shattered ego and maybe even worse from that failure. On the other hand, if it's a business that's tried and true and has lots and lots of success stories, and maybe even is still in vogue, is sort of new, and has had a lot of success stories, there's playbooks for you. Go copy it.
I love it. And I couldn't agree with you more from the goals perspective. Like, I am actively working on that right now for my businesses and what I want for my life. And it's challenging. Sometimes it's hard to write those things on paper because you feel like if you just keep thinking about it, it'll come eventually. Once you write it down, it's like, I got to go achieve this. It's not going to stare at me in the face until I get there. And if I don't get there, I've got proof that I failed. So I want to understand more about the restaurants. So obviously, like you mentioned, and I think for most people, if you're involved in business, starting a restaurant is one of the lowest success rate businesses you can get into. What was your, like, what was the basis of your restaurant? What's the cuisine, and how did you go from that one restaurant to now 7, and like you mentioned, other lines of business in that space?
Well, the first restaurant, which most of the restaurants we've created since then are consistent with this, is we were trying to thread a needle between gastronomic excellence and accessibility. And so my culinary team is world class and was at the time world class, but the offering was a little more populist. First of all, it's Italian food, which lends itself to, I mean, even young kids like a cheese pizza.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's a cheese pizza with maybe something else added on it, the kid gets a little older and they're still pretty comfortable for at least experimenting, maybe, let alone doing really complicated shapes of pasta and interesting creative ingredients. And so we have this really familiar and comforting, I like to call it delivery agent, if you will, of pizza and pasta. And so it was this intersection of culinary excellence with accessibility, and the environment of our first restaurant, and we try to still create those environments. Really, servers wear whatever they want. We try to express to servers that we are in the business of hospitality and service. People who come in for dinner are your peers. It's not hierarchically that they're superior to you, and so you should treat them in a hospitable way. And you are serving them, but you deserve to be treated the same way and feel like a person, a human as well. And same thing, with the back of the house. And we really tried to create this feeling of comfort for everybody. And the price point, we've gotten more expensive since we've become so popular. That's the law of supply and demand. That is so much demand, the price is allowed to go up. But at the time we opened in 2009, coming out of the credit crisis, our first restaurant, it was culinary excellence at fair prices and a really cool, fun atmosphere. So we really thread a needle there. And since then, and I'm not saying we invented that because there were others, but we certainly were one of the early adopters of that way of being, of having a restaurant. It's become really common now, I suppose, which is expecting especially in the cities, expecting culinary excellence from comfortable environments. And I think that will for forever be universally appealing. That is to say, somebody who maybe is really uncomfortable in a tasting menu, multi-Michelin starred type of restaurant, is going to be comfortable in one of our restaurants, even though we're serving food that's, I believe, on par with Michelin 3-star restaurants. And somebody who's used to going to Michelin 3-star restaurant is certainly going to feel comfortable with our food and maybe coming twice a week rather than going only on occasion. So I think that is a reason we were successful. I don't think we could have done what we did in a town that was less evolved in sense of gastronomic excellence as San Francisco is. I mean, maybe it would have worked in New York, but we really were in the right place at the right time, I think, with that concept.
And obviously now you've scaled it up, like you mentioned. Is it all under one name, or are they new spots that? Okay, so it's new spots.
We learned something we had a bunch of different concepts going into COVID, and we still have a few different concepts. But when COVID hit, it was really scary for the restaurant business. We had to furlough everybody. Restaurants are, by their nature, at least they were for us as well, pass-through companies. They're structured as LLCs. You get taxed whether you distribute cash or not. So, of course, all cash is distributed out. Something like COVID happens, and in the restaurants, all there is working capital. Certainly not enough to keep people employed while there's no revenue coming in. And so we had to furlough pretty much everybody but a few people. It was really scary. And the guy started the company with Chef Tom, who's now the CEO of Flower and Water Hospitality Group. He and I spent a weekend developing a strategic plan that scaled our Flower and Water Pizzeria concept. That is to say, we wanted to have something that was successful both in the four walls of a restaurant, but also in your home, delivered to you. And our pizzeria concept lent itself to that. We also concluded we had a pretty good brand that was scalable, the Flower and Water brand, and could be applied to a consumer packaged goods business, which would be unrelated to four-wall restaurant business. And so we're now in 350 grocery stores under the Flour and Water brand with our dried pasta. And our goal is to be in every grocery store in America someday. We're going to launch frozen pizza, and we're going to scale our Flour and Water Pizzeria concept. But this is a post-COVID business plan, post-COVID strategy. Pre-COVID, we had a bunch of restaurants all under different concepts. We were super proud of them. We were very well respected, and they were great cash flow businesses. And we thought, we're living a great life. This is great. We'll just keep doing new restaurants every few years. And COVID really changed the view on that.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people in the restaurant space, and obviously even for every business, but specifically for restaurant and the hospitality industry as a whole, that time was such a struggle. And even going back to our conversation at the beginning, like those are times as an entrepreneur where you're just getting punched in the face multiple times, and you've got to just keep going and keep going. And you just kind of explain to like what it looks like to have an idea, execute on the idea, have something that you can't control, derail the idea, recreate the idea, and relaunch and recontinue and move in the right direction. That is something I always preach when I'm connecting and meeting with younger people is you've got to be very flexible, and you've got to be able to bob and weave and do. Maybe in your head, it's not that beautiful baby you created or the exact idea you had, but if it's where the money's going and where the business itself should be headed, follow it and build on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, when one of the things Tom and I came up with in that period of time was we were going to launch an investment fund. We thought that a lot of restaurants were going to fail, and they were amazing teams, and we could raise money from investors and acquire a bunch of restaurants that had failed, but keep those teams employed when COVID ended and do kind of like a roll up and have a fund. Well, guess what? Government support came in and allowed restaurants that wanted to survive, probably to survive. And I say wanted to because some people were just tired and it just beat them down, and they just didn't keep going. But nonetheless, that opportunity didn't avail itself to us. So that never happened. It was part of the strategic plan. We never executed on it. Another one was we were going to start doing wine consulting and build wine lists for other restaurants to help reduce their labor costs. I can go on and on about other stuff we came up with that we didn't execute on, but we iterated. So now this really well-formed plan about scaling the Flour and Water Pizzeria concept and grow, the consumer packaged goods business, that seems like it was just this inspiration that was inevitable. There was a whole bunch of other stuff we threw on the wall that didn't end up sticking.
Yeah, and that's just the way it is. I think I forget what page posted it, but I saw an example, and it was like one of these digitally made videos where it's like 3 levels, and there's just bow and arrows being shot at a target. The top person, it said average person, shot 1 bow, turned around, and didn't hit the bullseye and walked away. Second one was semi-ambitious but not motivated person. They shot 3 bows, missed all of them, and they walked away. Last one was entrepreneur or successful entrepreneur. They shot like 50 bows, and the 50th bow hits the middle, and that's the big win. This is somewhat of an example of that. I'm like, you're going to have all these amazing ideas. You're going to have shiny object syndrome. I mean, how could you not? We're living in a time right now where you could make money off of a small little thing in your pocket. You could make money off of. Like, the opportunities are endless, but being able to still keep yourself grounded enough to know, like, this is my opportunity or this is the business that's going to make me successful is challenging, but very important to understand because I'm sure people are listening to you talk through this and are relating to that. Like, oh, I had this idea, I had that idea, but you didn't allow that all to derail you because those didn't come true or those didn't come to fruition. You kept pushing forward, and the one that was going to work did end up working. And that's why you're here now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I read somewhere that the average billionaire has had more than 2 bankruptcies.
Wow. It's funny. You would hear that and think like bankruptcy, like what a scary word, like what a scary thing. But like the average billionaire has been through that part in their journey. You've got to hit rock bottom.
I didn't say the average billionaire has declared personal bankruptcy, but they've had multiple bankruptcies. In other words, as an entrepreneur, they started things, and it sort of makes sense. I mean, I'm not a billionaire. I'll never be a billionaire. I don't aspire to be a billionaire. And I don't think the kind of risk it takes to be a billionaire is the point. The point is, I think to be a billionaire, high probability is it's in your DNA to take huge risks. And when you do that, you fail. And then to become a billionaire almost certainly means that you have to keep going after the failure.
Yeah. As we kind of come here towards the end of the conversation, we've talked about obviously the financial planning business that you've built over these 15, 16 years plus. You parlayed that into the passion project, the restaurants that have also flourished. Is there anything else that you've been able to use the capital and use the wealth that you've created for yourself to do any fun projects or passions?
Yeah, by the way, with the restaurants, I'm not an investor in them. I get investors to invest in them, and a lot of
Okay.
people think, oh, he's a finance guy that invests in restaurants. And no, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur in the financial planning space, and now I've been an entrepreneur in the restaurant space. I have started other business. I started a chain of yoga studios that when COVID hit, we had to merge with another challenge yoga studio company. I'm now on their board. And I'm on the board of a couple of other businesses in the music production and promotion space that I didn't start, but I help support. And one of them is not successful at all. Careful about the music industry. One of them is a band management company that's very successful, does really well, and it's a traditional business. It's a business that has a playbook by which you can go use to replicate its success. So I do lots of other stuff with my time, and I do some investing also in some small private businesses. But I have so much exposure, if you will, to entrepreneurial type endeavors of my own. I actually don't invest much in others' entrepreneurial endeavors.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. You've got all of this stuff going on for yourself. Why not invest in yourself? This is the way that I look at it. And obviously you're building and part of all of these projects that you've been a part of for a while now. So I can see how that would be the kind of the angle. I want to ask you, I asked this question towards the end of all of my interviews. And it's one of the basic questions, but I always think it leads to some good ideas or good perspective for people listening. And you've obviously had a successful journey here, but if you could go back and talk to the 18-year-old you, what would be that kind of pass the torch, big piece of advice you would provide?
It's people. It's all people. And when I was starting out professionally, had I realized that the real key to my ultimate success and happiness, and I don't mean highest potential financial gain, I think this attitude probably brings financial gain ultimately, but it's always in the service of others, whether it be your customer or client, whether it be your business partner or business partners, whether it be your team members who hopefully you're nurturing, whether you're an entrepreneur and you're in a leadership position, or your peers that are part of your cohort. It's always about being in the service of others, and that is real. I really believe that's where true happiness comes from. And I it's easy for me to say when I have economic security, and at 18 I was not at all confident I would have economic security forever. So satisfying my base needs was really all I was thinking about. I couldn't bring myself to think about people. But in retrospect, at that time, I think if I realized then what I know now about people, I probably could have, even though I was hustling to make sure I wasn't starving, I think I would have been able to hustle in a little more of a humanistic way.
I love it. And I think for me, taking that advice at I'm 25, that is something that I've always put forward is how many people can I meet? How many connections can I make? Because coming across really amazing people. There's this one quote that I had a guest say where they were like, you're 20 mutual connections away or less from somebody who can make you $1 million. You just got to go out there and meet people. Obviously,
I'm going to flip that around. I'm going to flip it around and saying there's 20 people out there that you can help to maybe get to one person that you can help make $1 million.
I love it.
Oh, by the way, you'll probably get paid.
I'll get paid?
By
like the person,
nature, by having the attitude of that I'm going to go out there to help others is how I will get paid, rather than I'm going to build my network to go down to, to be able to find the needle in the haystack, if you will, that is ultimately going to be the one that I can monetize the greatest for myself. It's how many people can I help to get to the one that I can help the most, and along the way probably get paid. I'm just going to flip that story around a little bit.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that. And it's always good to gain a different perspective, because that's something I've thought about as like a little blurb that stuck with me. Now this is a different way to look at it, and in reality makes more sense, and is probably the right way to be looking at it. So David, I just want to say thank you so much for this conversation and the time, the knowledge that you provided me and anybody listening and watching right now. So I want to say thank you so much. I know you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you cutting out this time for us. I want to make sure if it's something that is valuable to you, on social media or on any of these platforms, where can anybody listening go and follow you, connect, and interact with some of the stuff you're building?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't chosen. I know some people come on podcasts because they're trying to promote something or amplify whatever what they're selling. That's not my choice. My choice to come on podcasts as a guest has really been because I think I've developed some ideas and some wisdom over the years, and I want to share it. And everybody tells me I should write a book, but I hate writing. So I like talking. So if I can get on here and talk about my ideas, and to the extent that plant seeds with other people and informs decisions they make in a positive way, that was my goal. With that said, I have a silly little website called David Steele. It's davidsteele.xyz, DAVIDSTEELE.xyz, that you can see all the stuff I'm involved in. And you can also, my financial planning practice, which is the thing I spend the majority of my time on. My email address is dsteele@onewealth.net, dsteele@onewealth.net.
Amazing. And we will make sure to have that linked below, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or you're watching on YouTube. It'll be in the description for you to go and find those links, potentially be able to connect with David. And I really do appreciate that you jumping on the shows are coming from that standpoint. I know for me, I do this for the guests and I amplify people's stories. And sometimes I've come across people who are using the show for financial gain. So it's always refreshing to have a conversation like this and a guest like yourself. And again, I can't thank you enough for providing this knowledge for me and everybody that listens and interacts with us.
It's my pleasure. I'll come back anytime. So just let me know.
Yep. We'll definitely plan to have you back on as you continue to crush it in all these ventures.
Thank you.